Welcome, welcome to the first original session today. We had the pleasure last year of having Eliot Higgins presenting, and it was such a great success so that we wanted him back this year, and he said, that's fine, and here he is. He will talk about a blog that appeared 2012, Brown Moses on Syria, and move on, I think, to his new project, Bellingcat, covering, amongst other things, how Russian troops go into and cross the borders to Ukraine using social media to find the facts and the faults and everything. And I wish you good luck. Give a warm welcome to Eliot Higgins, everyone.
So, around 2 years ago, 3 years ago now actually, I started a website called the Brown Moses blog. It was basically a place where I could just post about things I found interesting. My background has nothing to do with journalism or conflict. I started off working in finance and administration, and I was just really interested in what was going on in the Middle East with the Arab Spring. So I noticed there was a lot of video content coming from those countries that was broadly being ignored by the media, and I just wanted to write about it. So I started a very basic Blogspot blog, which you can see here, very basic indeed, just to put my thoughts, and it became more and more popular. And I used various techniques to verify videos, to do investigations on things like cluster bombs being used in Syria, chemical weapon attacks. And eventually, I started a crowdfunding exercise for a website called Bellingcat. The name Bellingcat is based on an old fable. And the fable is basically there were a group of mice who were very scared of this cat. And they decided what they'd do is put a bell around the neck of this cat, so they'd have a warning system of sorts. But they realized that they couldn't actually figure out how they'd get the bell around the cat's neck in the first place. So what Bellingcat is really kind of referring to that fable. And I ran a crowdfunding exercise for it. We raised just under £51,000, which was enough to make a nice-looking new website. And really, Bellingcat was about two things. One, it was about bringing together a lot of the really good writers I saw out there who weren't getting much attention, but were doing really good work on what we call open source investigation. That's using stuff that's already out there, freely available on the internet, be it social media or Google Earth, to do investigation. And also a resources section so people could actually learn how to do this themselves. So very early on, one of the things we did was look at the downing of MH17 in July 2014. And we had various photographs and videos that showed what appeared to be a missile launcher. And we wanted to verify where they were taking and other information about them. So this is one example we had. This was a photograph that was taken. We didn't know where it was taken. We were told it was taken in a place called Shiznay. And you can see here, this is the actual missile launcher driving through the town. It's on the back of a truck. So we started looking and seeing where we could, figure out where this could be. So one guy who now works with me called Eric Toller, he figured out that this sign, although it's obscured, it can only be so many words in Russian. So he started putting the word into search engines, and it came up with this webpage, which is a wiki for streets in eastern Ukraine. And he actually found the name of the shop in a town called Torres, which is close to Shiznay. And he had a partial address. So he put the shop name and the partial address into Google again, and he came up with this. This is a court document about a fight that happened in the shop. And from this, we actually were able to get the full address, and that points to this location in Torres. But we couldn't say this was definitely the right place, so we wanted to be 100% sure. So we're looking at the image again. And if you look very closely on the images on the right-hand side that show a building with these black and white stripes in the corner and this shop with a kind of yellow hoarding, what we have found were videos posted by a local of him driving around the streets. He had a very strange hobby. He would drive around the streets, record what he could see, and then post it onto YouTube. But he managed to film in two videos the shops. You can see on the left-hand side the apartment building, and then on the right-hand side you can see the building, which is the shop with the yellow hoarding. And he also had a video showing him approaching the same location from a different location. So what we were able to do using this was actually establish exactly where this photograph was taken. And because we knew exactly where the photograph was taken, we could then use that to actually calculate the time of day, because we could see the shadows. And there's actually sites like this. This is a site called SunCalc that allows you to show where the shadows will be at a certain time of day. This is used by photographers to kind of, figure out where the shadows are going to be. But we kind of used it the other way. We used it to see where the shadows were to tell what time of day it was. And this gave us approximately the time of 12:30. So it looked like there was this missile launcher there around 12:30. In this next video, we see the missile launcher again, and what was unusual about this video is the person who shared it actually gave the exact location and the time. But you can't trust everything you read on the internet, so I wanted to double-check where this actually was. So to begin with, I put the location they gave into Google Earth. This seemed to show an area that was very similar to what was visible in the video. So I rotated it around to get the view that was visible in the video, and then started looking at various things that matched between the video and the satellite map imagery. So we could see various structures that were visible. You could see pathways that were also visible there. And in fact, later on, it was possible for journalists to visit the area and actually take photographs from the ground to show that this was exactly the correct location. So we had a time of 11:40, and we had a time of 12:30. So I wanted to know, is it possible to travel between those two locations in that time frame? So I used a resource that's available on various sites, which is a route finder. This is the RAC route finding website, and I merely put in the address, the two addresses, and it gave me a travel time of about 35 minutes. So that fit clearly with the time frame. This next video was taken in the town of Shiznay, and this shows the missile launcher. Now it's dismounted the truck and it's driving south out of the town. And again, I wanted to find the exact location, so I actually put a call out on Twitter to say if anyone could find this. And within 10 minutes, I had about 15 different replies. And they all pointed to this location. And the reason is this, it's quite an unusual road because you have 2 lanes and there's trees in between it. And we can actually match the trees that are visible in satellite map imagery to what's on the road. We can also show there's roads coming from the east that have a tree in between them. And there's also a red roof building there as well. You'll also note it's filmed from a very high vantage point. And what we were able to do then is say, okay, where is the camera location? And it was clear that at the top of that road, there was actually apartment buildings that this could have been filmed from. This following video was actually posted by the Ukrainian SBU, and this is what they claim to be the missile launcher on the truck again, this time driving towards Russia. And what's very significant about this one is now this is actually missing a missile from the top of it. There should be 4 missiles, but there's only 3. So this strongly suggests it's post-launch. And if you compare it to the truck that was seen earlier, you can see it's the same truck that's transporting it. So now this is a video I'm going to show you from the Russian Ministry of Defense. And the Russian Ministry of Defense gave this presentation on July 21st, talking about this video.
The good example of such fact is that some mass media showed transportation of the launching set of Buk M1 made from, as it is supposed, from Ukrainian territory to Russian territory.
Налицо явная подтасовка материала.
We can clearly see the facts juggled.
Снимки производились в городе Красноармейске, что подтверждается находящимся рядом с дорогой баннером, на котором указан адрес автосалона на улице Днепропетровская, 34.
So what he's pointing out there, he's saying in the video, the sign actually says something that shows it's in Ukrainian government-held territory, not separatist territory. He's claiming the text on the sign says this address, and this address is a car showroom in government-held territory. But that's a lie, and it's a provable lie. What happened shortly after this video was published, the Euromade in PR Twitter account, which is pro-government, posted this as the location. They said this is where it was filmed. They posted this image, which was taken from Yandex Maps Street View imagery, saying this is the exact location. And there's certain elements that match. For example, the post that's visible in the video appears to be visible in this Street View image. But the thing is, this sort of thing isn't unique, so there needs to be other ways to confirm this is the correct location. So one thing that was discovered was there's actually a site where they have traffic cameras in that town. And the thing is, they'd turned these cameras off several days earlier, but what they hadn't done is remove the preview imagery. So what we actually had is an image, which we could get from the website, that actually showed the same location. And you can see there's certain elements that match. For example, we can see the same billboards there. But again, we need to have better evidence of that. Billboards can be the same all over the place. So we found another thing. This is from Street View, again from Yandex Maps. And you can see this building that's got a red roof and a silver chimney, and the building to the right that's also got the same roof, and you can see that's visible in the background. Also, what was interesting is in the very start of the video, you can see a window frame, which shows this was filmed from inside, and there just happens to be apartment buildings just to the west of the location. What happened then is a local person actually went out with a camera and posted these photographs on their live journal of that location. And it was then possible to get very high-quality images to compare them. So here we have the same lamppost again. You can see it's identical. The curb of the road, where the pattern of the grass is also identical. But most importantly, the billboard. And you can see the billboard's identical. It has to be the same location. So this is what the Russian Ministry of Defense claimed on July 21st this billboard said. And this is actually what it said. It said something completely different. So it was possible to prove the Russian Ministry of Defense was lying in their July 21st press conference. What was also interesting is when some journalists visited this location later on, this sign had actually been vandalized to pull that part of the sign off. There was actually another lie told in that press conference. So they presented this map of what they claimed was the flight path of MH17 and showing how it had been diverted off course. On the bottom, you have 3 lines showing the flight corridor and then the diversion. But we actually compared this to what was available from the Dutch Safety Board's preliminary report, where they actually showed the route MH17 was taking. So this is the map from the Russians. There's the flight path that's been marked there in red. And then we overlay this red line here is what the Dutch Safety Board said the route was. And as you can see, the 2 paths are completely different. So again, it's possible to prove that the Russians lied in that press conference. And there's really only 4 main points they made in that press conference, and 2 of those are provable live. One of them is very dubious, and the other one is almost certainly untrue as well. So there's another image that was very important. Image was posted in Paris Match. And again, it shows the missile launcher. It's on the back of the truck. And this time there's actually a phone number visible on the truck. You can actually Google the phone number and find the place it's from. And people phoned up this place, and the owner was saying his yard had been taken over, and separatists had taken all his equipment. And we actually found the yard on Street View, and we basically followed the route from this yard to the previous locations we found, kind of traveling along on Street View until we found this image. And here we were able to actually compare various elements in the image to confirm this was exactly the place it was taken. And it was even possible to compare the tree branches in the image to show that they were very similar. Other images of this, the truck that was transporting the Buk missile launcher were posted in August. And this was in a separatist-held area. Someone took a photograph of the same truck. The owner of this truck said the cabin, the paint job, is unique to his truck. So we know it's the same truck. Later on, separatists posted this picture on their Facebook pages, showing that the same truck transporting a destroyed Ukrainian vehicle. So using this information, we were able to track the movements of this Buk missile launcher through separatist-held territory from Donetsk, which is on the bottom left-hand side, all the way through Torres, unloading in Chizny, and finally in Luhansk. And those of you who've been following the news recently may have seen yesterday shrapnel was identified by RTL News in Holland that was recovered from this crash site that came from a Buk missile. So obviously this is quite important. What we also were seeing a lot of around the same time were videos from Russia showing convoys. And some of these convoys contained Buk missile launchers again. And we were quite interested in these because there was this kind of idea, was this Buk from Ukraine, was it from Russia? And there was one that was in this convoy that was very interesting because it appeared to have the same markings of the one that we found in the Paris Match photograph. So this is a quick video comparison of the 2. So first of all, we skewed the image, making sure the proportions were kind of correctly represented. And then we overlaid this image from Ukraine with the images from Russia. So you'll start seeing, this is an image of the Buk in Russia, and it's fading back and forth. So even though they've painted out parts of the numbers, it's still clear that the position matches. There's also this marking on the side that's in the same position. The dirt mark from the exhaust is also from the same position. But most importantly is the rubber skirt damage on both Buks was the same. And we did this comparison. What you have on just above the tracks, you have this rubber skirt, and it's a very firm rubber. And it gets damaged in different ways. It's like a fingerprint. So what we found is when we laid them side by side, the one in Ukraine and Russia, they appear to be identical, apart from one difference. There was this kind of very significant difference, and it was either for one of two reasons. It was either a different missile launcher, or the SKUP had a very heavy amount of damage in that area. Because we had flattened the Paris match photograph, any significant three-dimensional damage wouldn't be properly represented. So we looked at the missile launcher, and we could see in the same location, the rubber SKUP had actually been bent out quite far. You can see it from one angle here, and from the other angle, you can see clearly it's been heavily damaged in that correct place. So this is the same missile launcher. Just to be sure, we went through every single Buck missile launcher we could find and compared the fingerprints. And as you can see here, the examples on the bottom left and on the right-hand side are other Buck missile launchers that show they clearly don't match. We then went through all the videos, and we found about a dozen videos showing this convoy. And what we have here on the top half of the image, we can see two videos where the Buck convoy features. On the bottom half, we've actually found street view imagery of exactly the same location. So with all these videos, we were able to find precisely where they were filmed. And that actually allowed us to track the convoy all the way from Kursk all the way down to Milerovo, close to a separatist crossing. We also wanted to know who else was involved with this convoy, who was the actual unit in this convoy. And we noticed in some of the videos, the number plates were clearly visible. And from that number plate, we were able to tell which military region they came from. And there was only one unit that used Buck missile launchers in that region. So we started searching through social media accounts of soldiers in that unit. So here's a typical soldier from the Russian military in that unit. And he posted an image on the right-hand side, which is the same truck that was in the convoy. So we had this link between the unit. We just wanted to confirm he was definitely in the unit we thought he was. So here he is on their parade ground. If you note the missiles in the background, you can actually see the missiles on the satellite map imagery. And other elements prove that this was the same unit. We also had other people in the unit posting videos of themselves and images of them in the convoy. So one guy posted this photograph on his Instagram account showing him in the convoy, and it was possible to match the number plate that was visible in it with a number plate of one of the videos of the convoy. We also had these guys who took a photograph of themselves on the bus that was being used to transport them, and you can see there's a guy behind him fast asleep, and on one of the videos of the convoy, you can actually see the guy asleep in the window of the bus. So what we were able to track these vehicles, and then we had the idea of, if we can track these, why can't we track more vehicles? Because there was lots of claims of Russian vehicles turning up in Ukraine. So using a platform called CheckDesk, we started tracking vehicles. We looked for social media postings where people were saying, I've seen this vehicle. People started contributing stuff to the site. We verified what we could, and we were able to create a map of it. So the great thing about CheckDesk is people can submit stuff, and you can have this open conversation about where this was filmed, and it's very clear and transparent. Now, what was very useful is some of these photographs were people in the street taking photographs. Some of them were from people like this who were kind of useful idiots. This is Graham Phillips. He's someone who was filming a lot of stuff with the Russian separatists. And what he managed to film here were T-72 tanks. And these are a very specific kind of T-72 tanks, T-72B3. B3 refers to the modifications that have been done, and these modifications are unique to Russian tanks. These are not done in Ukraine. So these tanks he filmed are Russian tanks. So thanks to that, we've been able to build up this map on a site called Silk. And Silk is a great site because what you can do, you can create a database of information, and then anyone can go in and use visualizations from that database. They can display it as a map, a pie chart, anything they want. You can embed those visualizations, and people can copy those visualizations and change them without changing the main data set. So it allows this information to be very shareable. But what we were able to find were vehicles that were inside Russia and match them to vehicles that later appeared in Ukraine. So here we have a howitzer that appeared in July in Russia, and then later on in September. And we know it's the same one because you can actually look at the markings on the side, and they're exactly the same markings. Another example, a BMP-2 that was also seen in Russia, first in August, then in February 2015. Hopefully they've written on the side of it so we can really clearly match it's exactly the same vehicle. And kind of one thing we do, we also look at kind of the camo markings and stains and stuff like that to see if they're the same. So by using this, we were able to prove once and for all that this was definitely the same location and the same vehicle. So we managed to collect a huge amount of information showing that Russia had been sending vehicles from Russia into Ukraine. And something else we did, we looked at Google Earth, and a contributor to the site he had started his own blog up and he came to me and said, I've been doing this blog where I've been looking for craters in Google Earth in Ukraine. And he had dozens and dozens of these sites. And I thought that's the kind of obsessive attitude you need to be successful in this area. So I kind of invited him to I have a group of volunteer investigators now, and we kind of discuss ideas. And he came and showed off what he did. And one of our group, Timmy Allen, came up with the idea of marking each crater using crater analysis techniques used by the US Army. Usually this is done on the ground, but because of the resolution of the map, we saw that you can actually do this on Google Earth. And in these sites, we would find these sites marked. There would be like 300 craters. We'd mark them with these markers, and what this allowed us to do was calculate an average trajectory of these craters pointed to the points of origin. So what we were also able to find were Google Earth images from just before the attack occurred, which you can see on the top, where you can see on the left, it's the actual site the attack was launched from. You can see it's completely untouched. On the right-hand side, you see where the attack actually hit, and you can see that's untouched. A few days later, you can see on the left-hand side, there's now marks in the field where the launchers were parked, and on the right-hand side, you can see the field's now covered in craters. So this is a close-up of where the attack was launched from. This is inside Russia, and you can see that there's clearly markings where the vehicles have been. You can see the burn marks behind the vehicles, and you can see the tracks where they've been traveling to the attack site, then back into Russia. And by doing these calculations, we were able to establish that the trajectory of the attack pointed back to the launch site, and the direction of the burn marks pointed back to the crater site. So we were able to show here that the attack had come from inside Russia into Ukraine. And these attacks were very important because what had happened at this period, the Ukrainian separatists were losing. And they were being pushed very close to the border. And then all of a sudden, they started having a lot of military victories. They started having a lot of artillery attacks backing them. And there were dozens of these artillery attacks reported. Another much larger attack happened here. This is a small part of a crater field where there's about 800 craters. And again, we went through and marked every single crater. But here we had something a bit different because you have these markers here. Each color represents a different direction the attack came from. And what we were able to do is each of these lines represents a point of origin for these craters. There are 6 different attacks. 5 of these attacks point to locations inside Russia where there were burn marks and signs of artillery launches. 2 of them pointed to this location. And what was very interesting about this location inside Russia is you can see the burn marks on the ground again and the activity, but people filmed the launches as they were happening. So here you can actually see multiple rocket launcher fire from Russia into Ukraine. But how did we actually prove that was coming from Russia into Ukraine? Well, first of all, we started off by looking at each of the videos and doing something called geolocation, as we did with the videos of the Buk missile launchers, finding the exact location where this was taken. This example here was particularly interesting because it took us a very, very long time to figure this one out because we had the location, and it looked like the guy was in a building filming. And we just couldn't see the building he was filming from, like it wasn't there. But then we noticed something at the very start of the video. You can see leaves of a cherry tree just in the frame. And what he was actually doing, he was sat inside a tree filming. And that's why there was no building there, because he was inside a tree. And once we had established that, we produced this map. And what you see on the left-hand side are the trajectories coming in from the artillery attack, and all these lines represent the point of view and what we can see. And all the lines showing the point where the artillery attacks were coming from that we geolocated just happened to cross exactly on top of the spot where the launches were seen. What we also had, which was very interesting, were posts like this. And this is from a local social media site for the town. And this is the moderators warning people not to give away information. So what they're saying is stop giving away information. What do you guys don't get? No one will believe you. You are giving away straight proof that Russia is attacking Ukraine. Delete it, please. Think with your head. And people kept posting videos. So someone else posted, close the topic, and those idiots who are putting videos online, complete fools. Why are you adding these? So you had this situation where we've not only got the videos of the launches, but local people telling other local people not to post those videos online. We also had a local journalist who visited the launch site, and she found lots of these strange red caps on the ground. And she picked these caps up, and she actually took one home with her. We emailed her and asked if she had happened to pick any up, and she did. And these caps are very interesting because these are actually end caps from 122mm artillery rockets, the exact type that we can see launched in the video, the exact type that we can see leaving burn marks. So there's yet more evidence this attack happened. We also watched the videos, and we saw that the angle of attack was 20 degrees. We found artillery tables for that kind of rocket, and it just happens if you have an angle of 20 degrees, you'll get a range of about 15.5 kilometers. And if you draw a line between the two locations, you can actually see there's a 15.5 kilometer difference between the two locations. So from this one attack, we were able to, from just social media, we were able to collect a huge amount of information that we could use to establish Russia had been firing rockets into Ukraine. So this really shows you, purely from sources that are being posted on social media, open source information, they can build a huge amount of information. We're still doing ongoing research into various topics. For example, we've been contacted by the Dutch police investigation into the downing of MH17, who has been taking a lot of looking at our work, and we've gone through it in detail. They've been very interested in that. And there's other areas we've been looking into as well. For example, we're still looking into the brigade that was responsible for the downing of MH, or we believe was responsible for the downing of MH17, because their soldiers have lots of social media accounts. Something else we're looking at is the military camps that have appeared along the border regions with Ukraine. Because what happens is you can see the camps on Google Earth, you can see those camps growing. You can then go and actually look for social media accounts of soldiers who are located there and actually get an insight of what's actually going on in those camps. So that's everything. Thank you very much for your time. And I hope you'll visit our site in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think tomorrow you will do a workshop as well.
That's correct. I'm doing a workshop tomorrow if you want to learn about how to do this yourself.
But please, if there's questions, I got the weapon. So, anyone?
Thank you. I guess my question is, what kind of response have you gotten, if any, from Russian officials? Because, of course, they vehemently have denied that they're involved in Ukraine. So I'm wondering what kind of response you've gotten from Russia, if any. And I know that their internet trolls are pretty vicious. Yeah. And what kind of response you've gotten from them amid your revelations?
For the most part, the response, I mean, obviously there's lots of Russian trolls and people who just support Russia anyway who are constantly sending me a message on Twitter to say how awful I am. Most of the response seems to be through Russian media. So Russia Today, for example, when we published the report talking about the comparison between the Buk missile launch from Ukraine and Russia, they spent several minutes discussing how awful this kind of work with and how dangerous it is. I think they described it as, the presenter described it as dangerous, this kind of work. Then when we produced the report on crater analysis, Sputnik spent a very long time trying to kind of debunk me, and they contacted me and asked if I'd been ever paid by a CIA-linked organization. I said no, and they published that denial kind of just out of nowhere in the thing. They also, it's quite a common theme. And another one thing that I found particularly amusing is they looked at when my company was registered, the company that owns Bellingcat, and they noted that it was established several months before the Ukrainian events occurred, suggesting there was some kind of link between my website being established and the events in Ukraine. But that's kind of the level of it at the moment. It's kind of being done through the media more than anything. Someone down this end.
Quite short. What has been the response from Western media?
We've had a really good response. What we've started doing a lot now is when we publish stuff, we'll do it in several different languages. So with the report we did on cross-border artillery, that was covered in The Guardian, but we also published it in Russian and German. And in Eastern Europe, that got a huge response. We had a lot of coverage in Eastern Europe about that. Germany covered it a lot. What's been interesting is now we've got this kind of, I've got this group of people now, they're kind of volunteering their time as investigators, and they're very good investigators. And one of them's from Finland, and there's no one else in Finland doing this kind of work. So he's now getting a lot of media attention and attention from various organizations because he's pretty much the only person who's doing this kind of in public. And there are so few people who are doing this work that it's like every new person who learns how to do it is a huge benefit to the kind of community as a whole.
Any other questions? If not, we're going to say thank you to Eliot for now and see you again tomorrow. Thank you.
See you tomorrow. Thank you.